Hello,
Hi guys!
travelers. Hey! Oh my gosh. We have a really fun show today. It's all about how to travel around the world on a budget, which is important because if you did not have a budget, it would be hard to travel around the world.
That's true.
Right?
Very true. I am wearing my shirt that I actually wore when I went to Belize. Belize diving services.
Was it unbelievable?
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. Hashtag dad joke.
Yes. So what's really, really cool about this episode is that each of us are actually taking on some aspect of travel and being able to do it in a way that actually impacts our budget, cash flow management, that's responsible and really, really powerful. So why don't we start with you, Dimitry, in terms of like remind our listeners, remind our viewers what it is that you're doing and how you're traveling on a budget.
Yeah, so it was very traditional for the longest time. In all my 20s, I was working in my office. I was purchased a piece of real estate and I was paying my mortgage, and it got to the point where, at the age of 30, I was paying $2,500 a month for my one-bedroom apartment in Boston. And as great as that is to live in an awesome city, and I really wanted to be able to get out and explore and enjoy more. And so I was able to take my business on the road. And look, as someone who's an expert in personal finance, I really get to practice what I preach, because instead of paying $2,500 a month, I'm now full-time RVing and have been for over 4 months now.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds crazy, like I'm living out of my car, but at the same time, it's a really cool RV. It's like literally like a one-bedroom apartment on wheels. It's got everything that I need. And I've been to 19 states in 19 weeks. From coast to coast and border to border of the U.S. so far. And I have the freedom to go to Canada, to go to Mexico. I could even ship my RV to Europe and go RVing through Germany if I want to. But just from a housing expense standpoint, that was my great little travel hack. I was able to really change up my whole entire lifestyle. And instead of calling home a 800 square foot one bedroom apartment, I now have an RV that costs $600 a month with gas and propane and supplies and things like that. I'm still probably around $1,100 to $1,200 a month. Guys, that's less than half of what I used to pay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So one of the things I hear in that is if people are willing to make a life change of some kind, it's very possible to go travel extensively.
Totally.
Whether that be a tiny home, an RV, but essentially you got rid of your primary housing costs.
Correct. Yeah, I was able to rent it out, and now I have tenants paying my mortgage for me.
I love it. I love it. Very cool.
That's awesome. Cool. For me, I recently took a trip to Belize with my entire family, and you talked about housing, right? Like one of the biggest things. Well, actually, let me step back. The first thing that we did was the thing that I looked into was the exchange rate. So for U.S. to Belize dollar, every U.S. dollar was 2 Belize dollars. So we essentially doubled our wealth like that. It was awesome. So looking at exchange rates, that's a great way to travel around the world on a budget. Looking at different places, Belize would have, costed however much it costed, but if we went to Singapore or another super expensive,
Thailand, sure, Paris, whatever.
Extremely expensive. So looking at exchange rate is a great way to actually be able to travel and have your dollar stretch, right? Another one is really looking at the time of year that you travel. So there are certain countries or certain destinations that are more popular than others. And if you are willing to go on a time where there's less tourists or the weather is not as great or whatever the case is, you might save a lot of money on not only airfare, but hotels. We stayed at an Airbnb. And so for a 3-story building for an entire week for 6 people, we paid $2,500 US dollars. So it was very, very inexpensive. Our dollar went that much further, had so much lobster. It was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we recently got back from a 25-day European vacation, our way of traveling the world and saving money. Number one, our airfare was ridiculously cheap because we leveraged all of our points and miles as much as humanly possible. And we do this very strategically. So we charge everything that we can on a credit card every month that builds points that leads to either airfare or hotel stays. So our airfare internationally was just ridiculously cheap. And most people don't know, but it's expensive to get from the US to Europe. But once you're in Europe, it's very cheap to travel throughout the countries within Europe. So you can expect a plane ticket to cost anywhere from $29 to $69 for sometimes round trip airfare
awesome.
from country to country. So know that traveling internationally, once you get there, can be relatively cheap. We make it cheap by covering our airfare from the States over there and then paying cash for everything else. Secondly, it can be expensive to stay. We stayed in a VRBO, and we stayed in really nice VRBOs in 3 different places in Europe. But the way we saved money on a budget is we ate meals back in our VRBO every single day. We had typically 1 meal a day out and then 2 meals back. So we would have breakfast at the condo, and then we would go out and maybe have lunch and then come home and cook dinner. And by saving money, not going out to eat, it was an amazing difference than some of our friends who were eating out every single meal.
Especially for a family of 5.
Family of 5, yeah.
I mean, that dinner tab or lunch tab.
Dude, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Huge
ridiculous.
savings.
Huge savings. The other little tip that I did was I would take cash with me every single day because I had carried cash with me but divvied up how much I would get per day to spend. So to stay on that budget, you just know how much you have to spend and we don't go over it.
So you didn't spend the whole vacation's worth of money on the first week or
That's
something.
exactly right. Yes.
That
A good friend
24th
of
day
mine-
was still fun.
Oh yeah, a good friend of mine was traveling at the same time, and he said he didn't realize it, but he had bumped up on his credit card borrowing level while he was vacationing.
Woof.
Yeah. So
He had to increase his credit card limit, is that what he said?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's that easy to swipe nowadays, isn't
yeah,
it?
absolutely,
Whew.
absolutely.
Well, this was a really fun episode.
Yeah. Cheers to more travels.
Yeah, we would love to know what your favorite tip was, what places you have in mind in terms of where you're looking to travel, and if Dimitry, Adams, or myself, what are the tips that you're actually going to be taking to be able to travel the world on a budget. One thing that we also have as a free resource to you is our downloadable zero-based budget. It's a template that will allow you to really forecast and plan certain travel and incorporate exchange rates and really look at what it's going to cost for you to travel and pursue the things that are important to you. So like, comment, subscribe. We have a lot of fun here. Anything else that you guys want to say?
Enjoy.
Travel.
Yeah, what they said.